Okay, welcome. In this video, we will talk about how to co-create. I will show you the 5 main steps and aspects to set up a creative co-creation workshop or session. The 5 steps are as follows. First, determine the goal. Then identify the stakeholders you want to be involved. Make your co-creation session plan. Prepare the materials for the session, and finally, make a plan for what happens after. Next. The context, problem, and stakeholders are always slightly or completely different with each session, so you cannot design a general plan for all your co-creation processes. And therefore, for each of these 5 steps, we have compiled a basic set of questions to ask yourself. In this video, I will guide you through each of these 5 steps and the questions you will have to ask yourself. So the first step is defining the goal. What will the co-creation session process be about? During this step, you ask yourself 3 basic questions. What is the goal of the session? What environmental hotspot are we dealing with? And at what level? Second, what will you actually make together during the session? And third, when in your development process will you involve other people? The ultimate goal of your sustainability project is contributing to lowering the environmental impact on that hotspot. However, the co-creation process in itself also has a goal. It can be about collecting feedback, about mapping the system together for a better understanding, or testing ideas or prototypes towards lowering the environmental impact for that hotspot. Related to that is the outcome of the co-creation, your goal, and then, of course, what will you make together? Will you make new products, produce new data, prototypes, strategies, protocols, or visuals? It is important to have a clear idea of this outcome needed. Finally, the goal and what is being made also influences the moment that this process needs to take place. Then we go to the second step. So once the goal of your co-creation session is clear, you need to identify the stakeholders and the specific peoples you want to invite. During this step, you will have to think about how you invite people, what language you will use, and how much you tell people already in the invitation up front. So it's about communicating and expectation setting. First, you can map the potential people you could invite. Who would you want to co-create with? Which voices need to be heard? And what expertise is needed for the issue at hand? Besides that, think carefully about how many people you invite and the size and composition of your group. Again, in the invitation, it is crucial to manage the expectations well, because co-creation processes can be experienced as a waste of time, and this is often because the expectations were set too high. This also means that you must make the goals for the session clear to everyone and manage their time well. Finally, in inviting people, think well about potential hierarchies, tensions, or personal aspects that you need to manage. The composition of the whole group and their relations affect how they will work together and how free they will feel to express their ideas. The third step in planning your co-creation is about making a plan for the actual process. So you know the goal, you know the people you want to invite, and then with planning it, there are many aspects to think of, such as Where will it take place? Is it digital or physical? Is it in the hospital or at a dedicated other place? And what is the form of engagement? It can be more than just a workshop. Maybe you can offer different forms. Think about how to make it fun, how to make it equal in participation, so people get the same amount to speak, and how to make it as short as possible, since people in the hospital are busy. Then think about how are you going to facilitate the process? Who will lead it? Also think about how you will begin the session and how you are going to end it. How will people introduce themselves to each other, and how will you guide people through the co-creation experience? And very important, how will you get people to feel free to share what they want? And finally, make a plan of how you will structure the time. For the setup of your co-creation plan, it is useful to know that there are different forms you can use. The most classic form is one or a series of creative workshops with a lot of post-its, you know. However, you can also think of online platforms for co-creation or a more open innovation approach where people can work in a system and innovate together. You can think of making physical prototypes together and having different people test the newest models of prototypes or products. You can simulate a service experience. You can give communities the freedom and tools to design for themselves without you being there. That way, co-creation is actually delegating the power of decision making. In this step, for now, we mostly talk about a workshop format. So gathering a certain amount of people in a physical place for a specific amount of time. At the beginning of your session, it is very important to think about an activity to set the scene. What atmosphere do you want to create? Is it fun, serious, informative? And how will you create this atmosphere? So the co-creation outcomes depend on the collaboration skills of the team. These skills can be staged in different ways, by facilitating an open mindset, willingness to listen to each other, and addressing tensions. You can lay down simple communication rules, such as saying yes and instead of saying no. Let people finish their sentences and promote an open atmosphere by sharing yourself. To make your co-creation plan, you will have to create a set of activities. Make sure you have a good mix of more thinking, seeing, and doing activities. And structure these co-creation activities clearly by defining the duration of each activity. And consider that some of these activities may take more time than expected. Then what would be your strategy? Think about that up front. For people to generate ideas or improvements for the future, it is important to guide them towards thinking about the future. There's the theory of the path of expression that can help you to organize your co-creation activities. You can plan an activity about what is the current situation, recalling how this was 20 years ago. 20 years is about the minimum time scale that transitions can take place. And finally, you can then think of activity that stimulates them to seeing or doing about how things could be in 20 years from now. When you have your goal clear, you've identified the people you want to invite, and your activities are thought through, it is time to prepare the materials. So step 4, materials. These are not only about the creative materials, but also about the food and drinks, the name tags, the physical space, the furniture needed, and finally the gifts or things that people might bring home. Not every participant will be comfortable with these creative methods that are often used in co-creation. So it's important to also provide general and familiar materials, such as colored pencils and paper. You can also think of providing context-specific images or photos. In general, it helps for people not to start with a blank sheet. Try to give examples or suggestions and provide, for example, stickers, icons, materials, or shapes. You can tailor these co-creation materials and activities to suit the needs, expectations, and expertise of the participants you want to invite. Consider accessibility of these materials and the language you use. Finally, as I said, it is also really important to carefully create the physical space for co-creation. It is good to have a neutral space to co-create to allow different stakeholders to meet more equally. But also think about providing food and drinks, or not. The last thing to think about, step 5, is about what will happen after people leave the room or leave the co-creation session. This last step is a very crucial one and often one that is forgotten. In this step, there are important questions to ask yourself, such as how to keep moving forward. How will you get feedback about the input you've gotten? Who will then decide? How will you evaluate? And what will you give back to participants? During your session or workshop, it is important to end with a synthesis of what you have just done together. And based on that synthesis, you establish whether a decision needs to be made, and then by whom. If there is a next meeting planned or a next meeting already planned, announce this. Finally, communicate the outcomes of the co-creation session afterwards to the participants in an appropriate way. Finally, this sheet is an overview of all the questions to ask yourself. These are all questions that are rather common sense, but they are crucial to think about. You can use this checklist to verify whether you have thought of all the aspects when engaging stakeholders in your sustainability project in a hospital. Thank you for listening.